She had only $2 left, two cold bills clutched in her shaking hands as the snowstorm swallowed the town. But instead of running home, the 9-year-old girl walked straight toward the lone Marine sitting under the broken street lamp, his scarred face half lit, his loyal German shepherd watching her every step. She stopped in front of him, lifted the tiny envelope, and whispered a request no child should ever have to make. And in that moment, the Marine knew this wasn't just a plea for help. It was a cry that could change everything. Before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching. Leave your city in the comments. And if you believe God sends miracles through ordinary people, subscribe and watch until the end. This story will stay with you long after the snow melts. Snow drifted heavily across Frosthaven's silent winter square, swallowing every sound beneath a white, unbroken hush. The late afternoon light was fading fast, turning the sky a bruised shade of lavender as the wind swept between abandoned benches and frosted lampposts. In the middle of the nearly empty square stood a small girl, thin, trembling, and far too alone for a child her age. Abigail "Abby" Clark, 9 years old, had a slight frame that made her look even younger. Her chestnut brown hair, unbrushed and clinging to her cheeks, was soaked with melted snowflakes. Her skin was pale from the cold, and the oversized gray coat she wore, clearly a hand-me-down, was buttoned crookedly, leaving a narrow gap that let icy wind cut straight through to her chest. She clutched a small brown envelope in both hands, gripping it so tightly her knuckles turned white. Inside that envelope were exactly 2 crumpled dollars, the last money she had managed to save. Her boots, too thin for Montana winters, sank into the powdery snow as she took hesitant steps toward the man sitting alone on a wooden bench at the far end of the square. Staff Sergeant Cole Harrington, 36, sat with the stillness of someone who had learned to survive by listening more than speaking. He had the build of a lifelong Marine, broad shoulders, powerful arms, a back straightened not by pride but by discipline ingrained over years. His face, rugged and sharply angled, carried a faint scar along his right jawline, and a few days of stubble shadowed his chin. His black hair was trimmed short, and his eyes, gray like storm clouds, held a quiet watchfulness that rarely softened. He wore his olive-green Winter Marine Corps field uniform, the fabric thick and weathered, and heavy tan boots planted firmly in the snow. At his feet lay Ranger, his 5-year-old German shepherd. Ranger's amber-toned fur blended beautifully with the muted winter light. His strong, muscular build showed years of canine training, but his dark eyes were gentle and alert. Even at rest, he kept his head lifted, ears perked to every sound, cars passing on distant roads, the wind rattling a store sign, the crunch of Abby's hesitant footsteps. Cole glanced up the moment he heard those footsteps, sharp, short, uneven, footsteps of someone scared. He watched as Abby approached, every step small, deliberate, and trembling. His brows drew slightly together. Marines learned early to notice the details others missed. The bruise half hidden under her hairline, the torn seam on her coat sleeve, the way she clenched that envelope like it was her lifeline. Ranger sensed something too. The dog rose to his feet, tail still but ears forward, studying the girl with a seriousness that mirrored his handler's. Abby stopped exactly 3 feet from them, close enough to show purpose, far enough to flee if needed. Her voice when she spoke was thin but determined. "Excuse me, sir, are you the Marine who lives on Birchwood Road?" Cole blinked once. Yes. He expected her to run after hearing the confirmation. Most kids did, out of shyness or fear of imposing, but instead she stepped forward. With both hands she extended the envelope up toward him. I need help," she said, her lower lip trembling from cold and something deeper. "And I can pay you." Cole stared at the envelope for a long moment before slowly taking it. Ranger sniffed the air between them, leaning close to Abby's fingers and gently nudging her hand with his warm nose, as if urging her to breathe. Inside the envelope were 2 crushed dollar bills and a folded piece of wide-ruled school paper. He unfolded the letter carefully. The blue crayon writing wobbled unevenly. "Please make my uncle go away. He hurts my mom and my sister." Cole felt the cold snap deeper into his bones. Something inside him, some old buried instinct, tightened painfully. He lifted his gaze. "Where's your mother, kid?" Abby swallowed hard. "Home. Sleeping. The medicine makes her sleep a lot." "And your sister?" "Emily's 4. She hides in the bathroom when he yells." Her voice shattered on that last word. Ranger's ears folded back with a soft whine, and Abby's eyes darted down at the dog before she gently touched his head, almost surprised she was allowed to. Cole folded the note again, slower this time. His chest felt uncomfortably heavy. Memories he had spent years locking away pressed at him, memories of villages overseas where he had arrived minutes too late, children who had no one left to protect them, failures he carried like old scars beneath his ribs. He held the envelope back to her. "Keep your money." Her face crumpled with confusion. But that's all I have. I saved it. I thought—" She fought the tears, trying to be braver than her 9 years allowed. "I thought $2 was enough for someone like you." Something twisted inside Cole, sharp and unwelcome. "It's more than enough," he said quietly, placing the envelope into her mittened hands. "But you don't need to pay me. You just need to tell me everything." And then it poured out. She told him about Warren Clark, her uncle, her father's younger brother, a tall, heavy-set man with oily blonde hair, a scraggly mustache, and the smell of alcohol stuck to his clothes. He had moved in after Mira's illness worsened. At first he pretended to help, but quickly revealed himself. Temper unpredictable, fists quick, and threats constant. Every night, he locked the doors from the outside so the girls couldn't leave. Every morning, Abby checked on her mother, terrified she might not wake up. Warren warned them that if they told anyone, he'd take them away forever. As Abby spoke, her voice never rose above a thin whisper. She didn't cry, not because she wasn't hurting, but because she had learned crying made Warren angrier. Cole listened, without interruption. The wind howled around them, but he hardly felt it. His focus tightened like the familiar sensation before combat, every muscle alert, every breath deep and controlled. "Why me?" he finally asked, his tone softer than she expected. "Why come find a Marine?" Abby met his eyes with a courage that stunned him. "Because everyone says you're not scared of anything, and because people listen to you." Ranger pressed his head into Cole's knee, sensing his shifting emotions. Cole scratched behind the dog's ear once, grounding himself. "How did you get here?" Cole asked. "I walked. Warren thought I was taking the trash out. I went the other way." "In this weather?" His voice sharpened with worry before he caught himself. Abby nodded. "I had to come before he gets home." Cole closed his eyes briefly, exhaling through his nose. Something in his chest, something that had been rusted shut for years, clicked back into place. He stood slowly. "All right, let's get you somewhere warm." Abby blinked, processing his words with disbelief. You'll help?" Cole crouched down so their eyes were level. His breath misted in the cold air as he spoke. "Kid, this is not something you should ever face alone, and no one touches a child under my watch, not ever." For the first time, Abby's shoulders loosened, only slightly, but enough that Ranger sensed it. He stepped forward and nudged her coat, inviting her to pet him. She did, her small fingers sinking into his warm fur. Cole pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. His mind was already arranging steps like a soldier planning an operation. Police contacts, a trusted social worker, medical colleagues who could help Mira, veteran support charities, emergency safe housing, tools of a different kind of battlefield. But first, he needed to get Abby out of the open before frostbite set in. "Come on," he said gently. "We'll figure this out. You're safe now." Abby hesitated only a second before following him. She held the envelope tight against her chest, the same envelope that had once held her last $2. Now it held something else. A promise she didn't yet understand but felt instinctively. As they walked across the snow-covered square, Ranger trotted beside her like a silent guardian. But as they reached the edge of the square, Cole suddenly stopped. Something, or someone, was watching them from across the street. A shadow in a window, a shape that moved too quickly. Cole narrowed his eyes. Warren had come home early, and he wasn't alone. Snow pressed hard against Frosthaven that night, thickening into a restless, rattling storm as Cole Harrington guided Abby across the square. The wind clawed at their coats, howling against the wooden facades of stores already shuttered for the evening. Ranger stayed pressed close to Abby's side, his large frame shielding her from the worst of the cold. Cole kept one hand lightly on her shoulder, scanning every corner, every window, every shifting shadow, including the one across the street where he had momentarily seen Warren Clark watching them. Warren Clark was a man who carried disarray the way soldiers carried weapons. Tall, heavy around the torso, unshaven, clothes wrinkled and soiled, hair greasy from days without care. His eyes, a washed-out blue, had the restless flicker of someone who drank more than he slept. Even from a distance, Cole had recognized the posture of a man intoxicated, leaning too far to the right, head cocked to track movement, hands twitching with irritability. A man like that didn't return home early without a reason, and reasons involving men like him were rarely good. "Stay close," Cole murmured to Abby, his voice low, even. He didn't want to frighten her, but she already sensed the tension in the air. Her fingers were ice cold where they clutched his sleeve. Ranger let out a soft, warning growl, not loud but enough that Cole felt it vibrate through the leash. The dog's tail stiffened, his body angled toward the direction where the shadow had moved. But after a few seconds, the figure disappeared, leaving only the swirling snow and flickering street lamps. Cole didn't risk another glance. "We're heading to my truck," he said. "We'll talk somewhere safe." The truck, an aging but reliable dark green Ford pickup with scratches along the side from old off-road accidents, sat parked near the library. Cole opened the back seat, lifted Abby gently inside, then helped Ranger jump in next to her. The dog curled himself around her feet like a living barrier, the warmth of his body bringing color back into her cheeks. Once they were inside, Cole checked the mirrors twice before pulling into the narrow streets leading out of the square. He kept one hand on the steering wheel and one resting near his holster, not out of paranoia, but habit. Frosthaven at night could be quiet, but quiet was when the unpredictable happened. As he drove, Abby watched him with a seriousness far beyond her age. "Is he going to come after us?" she whispered. "Not tonight," Cole said, though the certainty in his voice came from training, not hope. "And not ever again if I do my job right." He meant it. Cole drove to a small cabin at the edge of town, a modest wooden structure with a tin roof, a back porch, and thick pine trees surrounding it like a natural fortress. He had chosen this place after returning from deployment because its solitude made sense to a man who carried too much noise inside. His head. The cabin held memories, good and bad, a reminder of what he had lost and what he was still trying to protect. Inside, he gave Abby a thick blanket and set a mug of warm cocoa in front of her. Ranger sat beside her, alert yet gentle, his head resting on her knee as she sipped the drink with trembling hands. Cole sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Tell me everything you haven't told me yet. Every detail matters." Abby hesitated, biting her lip. Cole didn't rush her. Eventually, she spoke about the apartment, small, mold creeping along the corners, broken heater, and windows sealed shut with duct tape. She described how her uncle locked the doors every night, keeping the girls inside while he stayed out drinking. She explained how their mother, Mira Clark, 33 years old, thin and pale with dark hair always tied in a messy bun, barely had strength to stand most days because of her worsening MS. Mira used to work as a part-time librarian, gentle and soft-spoken, with warm brown eyes that dimmed as the illness progressed. But now, she slept through entire afternoons, lost in exhaustion and pain. "And nobody knows?" Cole asked. "Mom tried telling someone once. Warren got mad. He said if she told again, he'd make sure they took us away from her. And I believe him." Cole felt a flash of anger, a sharp, controlled burn. Children shouldn't have to calculate survival like soldiers on a battlefield. Abby had been forced to become both protector and witness, roles no 9-year-old should carry. He stood up and pulled his phone from his pocket. It was time to activate the network, the same one he only used when life depended on it. The first call was to Sergeant Daniel Ruiz, a Frosthaven police officer and former Marine who had served beside Cole overseas. Ruiz was in his early 40s, stocky, with dark hair clipped short and a square jaw dusted with gray stubble. A man known for fairness and blunt honesty, Ruiz had seen his own share of family trauma growing up with an abusive stepfather. That history made him fiercely protective of children, and he never ignored a call involving them. Ruiz answered after 2 rings. "Cole, everything all right?" "Need you on a domestic case," Cole said. "Urgent, involving kids." Ruiz's tone changed immediately. "Tell me where and who." Cole relayed Abby's story with precision, no embellishment, no delay. Ruiz took notes, voice tight with controlled anger. "I'll pull the records," Ruiz said. "Check for prior calls. I'll put the apartment on priority watch tonight. Send me the address." Cole texted it without hesitation. Next, he called Lena Miles, a 38-year-old attorney who specialized in family protection and domestic cases. Lena had long black hair always tied back neatly, sharp cheekbones, and a mind even sharper. Her wardrobe consisted mostly of dark blazers, and she spoke with the calm assurance of someone who had fought too many legal battles for vulnerable families. She was known for her patience and strong moral compass, and had worked with Cole through veteran support programs. "Cole?" she said, recognizing his number immediately. "Do you need something from the pro bono list?" "Yeah," he replied quietly. "A little girl needs protection. Her mother, too." Lena's voice softened. "Send me the details. I'll file an emergency request for welfare check and protective custody review first thing tomorrow morning." Next was Dr. Hannah Porter, a military physician who had treated Cole after his last deployment. Dr. Porter, in her mid-40s, had kind eyes behind rectangular glasses, shoulder-length blonde hair, and a gentle but firm demeanor acquired from years of tending to wounded soldiers. She now worked at the Glacier Peak Medical Center but often volunteered for low-income families. "Hannah," Cole said, "I need you to review a case for someone with MS. The mother can barely function." Dr. Porter hummed sympathetically. "Send me her symptoms, medication list if you have it. I'll see what support programs or trials she qualifies for." Finally, he called the Frosthaven Veterans Community Fund, a small nonprofit that often trusted Cole's judgment on who deserved emergency aid. They were run by Elliot Hayes, a 50-something former Navy medic with a gentle demeanor, bald head, and a polite, slightly awkward laugh. Elliot promised temporary heating assistance, food vouchers, and could push a request for safe housing. When Cole ended the last call, he found Abby watching him with cautious hope. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now," Cole said, taking a seat again, "we document everything." For the next hour, he gathered her statements, times, incidents, names, speaking calmly, guiding her gently, letting her take breaks whenever Ranger nudged her hand. The dog stayed close, occasionally pressing his head into her lap as though promising silently that she wasn't alone anymore. When they were done, Abby looked exhausted but lighter, as if sharing the burden had eased its crushing weight. Cole placed a firm hand over hers. "This is the first step. You did the right thing coming to me." Abby nodded, though tears glimmered at the corners of her eyes. "Do you think he'll get mad?" "He can't hurt you anymore," Cole said, voice deep and steady. "Tonight, you're safe here. Tomorrow, we start taking back your home." Abby let out a small, shaky breath, but before Cole could say more, Ranger suddenly barked, a low, sharp warning bark that made Abby jolt upright. Cole turned toward the window. Headlights were approaching the cabin. Someone had found them, and Cole recognized the vehicle. It was Warren's truck. Snow hammered against the cabin windows in relentless waves as Cole Harrington stood frozen beside Abby, the truck's headlights carving 2 white beams across the dark pines outside. Ranger growled, a deep warning rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. Warren Clark's old pickup truck idled just beyond the tree line, its rusty front bumper glistening under the storm. The man behind the wheel stepped out unsteadily, his boots crunching into the icy ground. Warren looked worse than Abby had described. He was tall but slumped, built heavily around the middle, his stained jacket stretched tight over his belly. His hair, oily, blonde turning gray in streaks, clung to his forehead in clumps. A patchy, uneven beard crawled across his jawline like a permanent shadow. His pale eyes darted around with the restless, paranoid flicker of someone whose life revolved around alcohol, fear, and anger. Even from inside the cabin, Cole could smell the stale beer on him. What is he doing here? Abby whispered, clutching Ranger's fur with trembling fingers. Cole placed a steady hand on her shoulder. He won't get anywhere near you. Ranger barked sharply, shutting down any attempt of Warren to approach. Warren took a shaky step back, lifting his hands defensively. His voice slurred with frustration. I know she's in there. The kid's in there. She ran off with the trash. Cole stepped out onto the porch before Warren could finish. He didn't raise his voice, but something in his presence, a combination of rigid discipline and cold fury, made Warren falter. You need to leave, Cole said evenly. Warren sneered, though his voice cracked. This ain't your business, soldier boy. Those girls belong to me. No, Cole replied, descending the steps with slow, controlled movements. They don't. Warren tried to look intimidating, but the trembling in his jaw betrayed him. She's lying to you. Both of them. Kids say things. Women exaggerate things. You don't know what you're talking about. Cole didn't flinch. I know enough. The tension stretched, the wind slicing between them like a blade. Suddenly, a second vehicle, a marked police cruiser, turned into the drive, its headlights cutting the darkness. Sergeant Daniel Ruiz stepped out, bundled in a thick winter jacket, badge glinting beneath the porch light. Ruiz, a broad, muscular man with short dark hair peppered with gray, carried authority in the way he walked, steady, no nonsense, a man who had seen too much to be intimidated. Ruiz approached with a calm expression. Warren Clark? Warren blinked, stepping back. What's this about? Step away from the cabin, Ruiz said, voice firm. Warren's expression contorted into a snarl. She's my niece. I'm taking her home. That's not going to happen, Ruiz motioned to the cruiser. You're under arrest for suspicion of domestic battery, child. Endangerment and unlawful confinement. The color drained from Warren's face. You can't prove nothing. Cole stepped closer, eyes narrowed. There's more than enough proof. Another cruiser arrived and two officers emerged, one tall and lean with short sandy hair, the other younger with nervous energy. Together, they formed a triangle around Warren. Ranger stood at Cole's side, teeth bared but silent. Abby watched through the doorway, tears gathering but held back by determination. Warren's last attempt to fight back was pitiful. He lunged forward, slipping on the ice, reaching toward the door as if Abby might magically appear and forgive him. He managed 3 steps before Sergeant Ruiz grabbed his arm and pinned him expertly against the truck. You can't take me, Warren screamed, voice cracking as cuffs locked around his wrists. You did that yourself, Ruiz said, unbothered by the thrashing. As Warren was shoved into the cruiser, Abby burst into tears. She ran forward but froze halfway, unsure. Ranger nudged her gently. She darted to Cole, clutching his coat with tiny cold fingers. Ranger pressed against her legs protectively. Cole knelt down so their eyes met. You're safe, Abby. He won't hurt you or your sister again. She sobbed into his shoulder, the first real release of fear she had allowed herself in years. Ranger rested his head against both of them, tail low, posture protective. Ruiz approached them after the cruiser pulled away. Snowflakes clung to his short hair, melting into beads. We'll keep him overnight. Lena Miles will be notified. Emergency hearing first thing in the morning. Cole nodded. Thank you, Daniel. She's strong, Ruiz said softly, glancing at Abby. Like her mother. Cole took Abby back inside, wrapped her in another blanket, and sat beside her until her breathing steadied. When she calmed, he said gently, We're not done yet. We still need to take care of your mom. He spent the next 2 hours documenting everything again, photos of Abby's bruises, recordings of her recounting events calmly, not pressured. He called Lena Miles, who confirmed she'd file the emergency protective order by dawn. Dr. Hannah Porter also agreed to conduct a medical exam for Mira Clark and evaluate her MS treatment options. The next morning, Cole drove Abby back home. The apartment looked even worse in daylight. Paint peeling, metal bars rusted, windows dirty, and the lock scarred from years of forced closures. Inside, Mira Clark lay asleep on the couch, fragile and pale, her dark hair tangled across her pillow. She was small and thin, with gentle features overshadowed by exhaustion. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Abby rushed to her side. Mom? Mom, I'm home. Mira's eyes fluttered open slowly. Her voice was hoarse. Abby? Where did you... Oh, sweetheart. She sat up too quickly and grabbed her forehead. Warren isn't angry, is he? Cole stepped into view then. "Ma'am, Warren is in custody. You and your daughters are safe now." Mira froze, eyes wide, terrified, relieved, confused all at once. She looked him over, tall, uniformed, a stranger but with a softness in his expression that anchored her fear. Who are you?" "Cole Harrington," he said gently. "Abby came to me for help." Abby nodded. "He believed me, Mom?" Mira's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. I didn't know how to get us out." Cole shook his head. No one should go through this alone. Then came the steps, quiet, gentle, deliberate, that marked the beginning of healing. A social worker named Jenna Morley, a woman in her mid-40s with kind hazel eyes and chestnut hair tied neatly in a low ponytail, arrived to do an emergency welfare check. She wore a thick brown coat and carried a clipboard and a warmth that made Abby relax immediately. Her voice was soft yet firm, the voice of someone trained to handle pain with compassion. She confirmed the conditions, assessed the girls, and spoke gently with Mira, offering reassurance that they wouldn't be separated. Dr. Hannah Porter arrived later, bringing medical supplies and assessing Mira's condition. She explained treatment options, including a new MS medication trial. Her presence, calm and authoritative, filled the room with hope. Lena Miles called to confirm the protective order had been approved. Warren wouldn't return home, not legally, not physically, not ever. Cole stood quietly as the professionals worked, watching Abby stroke Ranger's fur while Emily, shy and wide-eyed with soft blonde curls and round cheeks, peered out from behind Mira's blanket. Emily was tiny, fearful, her blue eyes darting nervously, but she warmed quickly to Ranger, who gently licked her hand until she giggled for the first time in months. When the team finished and Abby's family had the first moment of true safety in years, Cole stepped outside into the crisp winter air, letting the cold clear his thoughts. Still, he knew this wasn't the end. There was housing to secure, therapy to arrange, medical aid to finalize, and threats, even jailed ones, sometimes had long shadows. But for now, justice had taken its first step, and Frosthaven finally felt just a little safer. The days following Warren's arrest unfolded slowly, like the gradual thaw beneath snow that still clung stubbornly to the streets of Frosthaven. Winter did not surrender easily in this mountain town. But inside the Clark family's new apartment, a small, two-bedroom unit on the east side of town, the air felt warmer than it had in years. Sunlight filtered through clean windows, scattering across freshly painted walls, and a heater that hummed steadily without sputtering. It was a place that finally felt safe. Mira Clark, once so frail that she could barely stay awake long enough to finish a sentence, began to show signs of strength that surprised even her. The early mornings no longer found her collapsed on the couch, but at the kitchen counter, tentative fingers curling around a wooden spoon as she stirred oatmeal for Abby and little Emily. Her dark hair, though still often tied in a messy bun, had regained a bit of luster, and her hollow cheeks began to soften as the new medication stabilized her symptoms. She still moved slowly, carefully, but she moved, something she hadn't been able to say for a long time. 4-year-old Emily Clark, tiny with round rosy cheeks and soft blonde curls that bounced when she walked, clung to her mother at first, hesitant to believe this peace would last. But when Mira took her by the hand and led her outside to build a tiny snowman in the courtyard, Emily's laughter finally returned, a sound so bright it startled the neighbors. Abby, now with the weight lifted from her small shoulders, began rediscovering the parts of childhood that fear had stolen. She read every book she could find in the apartment's modest shared library, sitting cross-legged on the rug with a pencil tucked behind her ear. She helped Emily with drawings, colored pictures of mountain animals, and returned to school with a new energy that stunned her teachers. Her grades improved, her smile grew, and her eyes, once dark with worry, gleamed with a confidence she had never dared show before. They didn't know who arranged the apartment, the medical support, the emergency funding, or the therapy sessions that came every Thursday morning with Claire Dawson, a gentle therapist in her early 30s with warm brown skin, curly black hair in a low bun, and soft-spoken patience. Claire wore thick sweaters in earthy colors and carried a leather-bound notebook everywhere. Her calm nature made the girls feel at ease, and she never pushed, only listened. For Abby, Claire's presence felt like the first time an adult wanted to understand her rather than dismiss her. Behind everything, quiet, unnoticed, stood Cole Harrington. Cole stayed on the periphery as the Clark women settled into their new routine. He continued coordinating with Dr. Hannah Porter, checking in with Sergeant Ruiz, and ensuring that Warren remained in custody while the legal procedures unfolded. But he refused to intrude on the family's healing, choosing instead to observe from a respectful distance. Still, Frosthaven was a small town. It was impossible for Cole to completely hide the fact that he cared. Some afternoons, Abby would spot his old green pickup truck parked halfway down Birchwood Lane, engine off, windows fogged slightly from the cold. Ranger almost always sat in the passenger seat, his large, amber-eyed head poking out just enough to scan the sidewalk. Whenever he saw Abby, the dog's ears perked up and his tail thumped against the seat, visible even from afar. Abby always waved. Ranger always wagged harder. Cole always nodded once, a silent reassurance. One afternoon, Abby worked up the courage to walk over. She found Cole leaning against the truck, arms crossed, his olive-green winter coat dusted with snow. The cold painted his cheeks red, and his breath fogged the air in slow, controlled bursts. His expression softened the moment he saw her. "Hey, kid," he said, voice warm and calm. "Hi, Cole." Abby held her backpack straps tightly. "Mom said I could stay at the library for an extra hour today. I got a new mystery book." "Good choice." Cole tapped the truck's door. "Ranger's been waiting to see you." Ranger jumped out immediately, bounding toward Abby with a soft bark. She laughed, a real, bright laugh, and wrapped her arms around the dog's thick neck. Ranger licked her face, tail swishing, and nudged his head under her chin as if claiming her as one of his own. Cole watched them interact, something like pride flickering in his eyes. Abby had become braver, stronger, no longer shrinking from shadows. After a few minutes, Abby looked up at him. Her expression shifted, no longer carefree but thoughtful, the way it did when something weighed on her mind. "Cole, can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Anything." She hesitated, twisting a strand of her hair nervously. "How long will you stay around? I mean, how long will you protect us?" Cole inhaled slowly. This was a question he had been preparing for, but never wanted to answer carelessly. The past had taught him too many lessons about promises. Ones he had made on foreign soil, ones he couldn't keep, ones that haunted him more than any bullet or night terror. He kneeled to her height, resting one gloved hand on Ranger's shoulder. "I'll protect you," he said softly, "until you don't need me anymore. And even then, I'll still be around." Abby searched his face, looking for any sign of doubt. She found none. A small smile tugged at her lips, not because she expected him to stay forever, but because she finally believed she deserved safety. But winter in Frosthaven was stubborn. Even in a warm apartment and with a strong support system, healing came with unexpected setbacks. One evening, as Mira prepared dinner, a simple stew simmering in a small pot, she suddenly gripped the counter, her hand trembling violently. Abby rushed to her side, panic tightening in her chest. Mira's legs wobbled. "I'm okay," Mira whispered breathlessly. "Just dizzy?" Abby didn't wait a second. She grabbed the phone and dialed the one person she trusted without hesitation. Cole answered on the first ring. Within minutes, his truck screeched to a halt in front of the building. Ranger jumped out first, tail down, sensing urgency. Cole entered the apartment quickly but calmly, assessing Mira with practiced eyes. He observed her breathing rate, wrist tremor severity, and skin pallor. Mira's complexion had turned ghostly, and she clung to the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Let's get you seated," Cole said gently. He helped Mira settle on the couch while Ranger rested his chin on her knee, offering steady warmth. Cole called Dr. Porter immediately, his voice steady, all business. Dr. Porter arrived 20 minutes later, wearing her dark blue winter coat and carrying a small medical bag. Her blonde hair was tied neatly back, and her serious face softened only when she saw Abby's distressed expression. She conducted a quick neurological exam, checking Mira's reflexes, eye movement, strength, and balance. "It's a flare-up," Dr. Porter confirmed, her tone firm but reassuring. "It was likely caused by stress and the sudden shift in routine. She needs a few days of rest and hydration, but She's stable." Relief washed over Abby so forcefully she nearly collapsed beside her mother. Emily climbed into Mira's lap, hugging her tightly. Mira stroked her daughter's hair with trembling fingers. Cole stood nearby, arms crossed, jaw tight with concern he didn't bother hiding. Once Mira was stable, the porter pulled Cole aside in the hallway. Her voice lowered to a whisper. "She'll recover. But this family needs more than medical support. They need long-term stability. Mira can't keep living under stress this high." "And they will get it," Cole said, determined. "Cole," Dr. Porter added, her gaze softening, "you can't carry everything alone." Cole didn't answer, because deep down, he knew she was right. But he had already chosen his path. Later that night, when the apartment finally quieted, Abby slipped outside, wearing her oversized coat and snow boots. Cole stood near his truck, hands tucked into his pockets, staring up at the pale winter moon glowing faintly through drifting clouds. Abby approached him slowly. "Thank you for today." "You don't have to thank me," Cole said, but Abby shook her head. "I do. You helped me when nobody else would. You helped my mom. You helped Emily. You made us feel safe again." Cole looked down at her, something deep and unspoken flickering in his eyes. Ranger pressed against his leg, sensing the emotional gravity. Abby took a small breath, her breath forming a cloud in the cold air. "Cole, if Warren ever gets out, what will you do?" Didn't blink, didn't hesitate. "I'll be here," he said, "every step of the way." But the wind shifted then, stirring new snow along the street, and although the Clark family didn't know it yet, danger wasn't gone, not entirely. Because Warren had someone outside the jail who still owed him a favor, someone who had just learned where the Clarks were living. The last days of winter in Frosthaven came quietly, as if the town itself exhaled after months of holding its breath. Snow still blanketed rooftops and pines, but the light had changed. It was softer now, warmer, gold instead of gray, stretching longer across the afternoons. In the small, safe neighborhood near Frosthaven Elementary, a modest 3-bedroom house with a fenced yard sat under a pale morning sun. It had been freshly painted white with pale blue trim, the kind of place people paused to look at because it felt like hope. Inside, Mira Clark moved slowly but steadily through the kitchen, her steps lighter than they had been in months. Her illness still lingered. MS didn't disappear overnight, but the medication, the therapy, and the simple relief of no longer living in fear had given her back parts of herself she thought were gone forever. Her cheeks held color again, a soft flush replacing the gray exhaustion. Her dark hair was neatly brushed, falling in loose waves instead of tangles, and she wore a thick cream-colored sweater that made her look almost serene. Her smile, the gentle maternal one Abby remembered from years ago, was beginning to return. 4-year-old Emily sat cross-legged on the living room carpet, surrounded by stuffed animals. Her blonde curls bounced as she moved the toys around, giggling each time one toppled over in the pretend tea party she had set up. Her round cheeks and bright blue eyes glowed with newfound happiness. The fear that once lived in her posture was fading, replaced by innocence she should have always had. Abby, now 9 but feeling closer to her real age than she had in years, sat at the kitchen table holding a thick envelope she had opened only minutes earlier. Her hands were trembling, not from cold, but from disbelief. The letter inside bore an official seal in elegant blue ink. Bright Minds of Montana Academic Scholarship. Her name, Abigail Clark, was printed neatly across the top. The words washed over her with a weight she didn't know how to carry. "Mom," Abby whispered, her voice cracking, "they picked me." Mira covered her mouth with one hand, tears welling. "Oh, Abby, sweetheart, you earned this." "I didn't think I could," Abby admitted, hugging the letter to her chest. "I didn't think anything like this could happen to us." Mira cupped Abby's face gently. "Because someone reminded us we deserve more." Someone. The same someone who had changed everything with quiet steps, unwavering protection, and a dog who seemed to understand hearts better than humans. That evening, as twilight draped itself over the neighborhood, Abby stepped out onto the wooden porch. The cold nipped at her cheeks, but she didn't mind. Snowflakes drifted lazily under the amber porch light, catching in her hair and on her thick red mittens. The air was peaceful, carrying only the faint sounds of children laughing in nearby homes and the distant hum of the town settling in for the night. Then she heard it, a low rumble, familiar and steady. The old green pickup truck turned the corner, slowing as it approached the Clark home. Its headlights cut through the falling snow, and the engine's growl softened as it rolled to a gentle stop across the street. Ranger jumped out before the truck fully halted. His muscular frame bounded through the snow, tail wagging wildly, paws throwing up soft flurries with each joyful step. His amber coat glowed beneath the streetlight like molten gold. He reached Abby first, nuzzling his head against her coat, licking her mittened hands as if greeting a friend he'd waited all winter to see. Abby laughed, dropping to her knees to hug the dog tightly. "Hi, Ranger," she whispered into his fur. "I missed you." Footsteps approached, heavy, controlled, familiar. Cole Harrington emerged from the truck, tall and imposing in his winter Marine Corps field jacket. His face, scarred, rugged, defined by discipline, softened when he saw the girl kneeling in the snow with Ranger wrapped around her. His breath formed clouds in the cold night, but his presence carried warmth no winter storm could dim. "Evening, kid," he said quietly. "Hi, Cole." Abby stood, brushing snow from her coat. Cole reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, the kind used for jewelry. The soft fabric contrasted sharply with the breadth of his gloved hand. "I have something for you," he said. Abby's eyes widened as he pressed the box into her palms. Her fingers shook slightly as she opened it. Inside lay a delicate silver bracelet. Hanging from its center was a small charm shaped like a key, its surface engraved with tiny, intricate patterns. Under the porch light, it shimmered like a promise. Abby looked up, tears filling her eyes. "It's beautiful." Cole's voice lowered, rough with sincerity. "You used your last $2 that day. $2 you could have spent on food or warmth, but you chose to fight for your family instead. That choice, that bravery, it opened every door that followed." He touched the charm gently. "This key is a reminder," he continued, "that your future belongs to you now. Not fear, not danger, not what that man took from you, just you." Abby swallowed hard. "Cole, can I give you something too?" "You don't have to give me anything." "I know," she said softly, "but I want to." She bent down, scooped a handful of snow, and packed it carefully in her hands. Then she shaped it into a small, uneven heart. Ranger observed, tail sweeping slow arcs in the snow. "It's not much," Abby said shyly, "but it's the first thing I made in our new home." Cole knelt beside her, accepting the snow heart with surprising tenderness. His scarred features softened even further, the edges of his eyes tightening, not from cold, but from emotion he rarely allowed anyone to see. "It's perfect," he said. For a moment, time rested gently around them, the porch light glowing, snow falling, Ranger sitting between them like a guardian carved from loyalty. But Abby suddenly looked worried. "Cole, will you leave now? I mean, not forever, but we're okay now. And you have your own life." Cole looked toward the house where Mira watched silently from behind the curtain, her face soft with gratitude. Emily peeked beside her, waving enthusiastically before hiding again. He inhaled, long and slow, letting the cold air ground him. "I'll give you space to grow," he said, "but I'm not disappearing, not completely." Abby nodded, a small smile forming. "Good. Because even if we're safe, I like knowing you're out there." Ranger pressed his head under Abby's hand again, as if seconding the promise. Cole rose, stepping back toward the truck. "Take care of your family, Abby. You're strong enough now." "I am," she whispered. And she finally believed it. Abby hugged Ranger one last time. Then she climbed the porch steps, turning back only once to see Cole holding the snow heart carefully, almost reverently, before placing it on the truck's dashboard. He climbed inside, Ranger bounding in after him. The engine started. The truck rolled forward slowly through the snowy street, but something new settled in the night air. It was the certainty that the Clark family had stepped into a life where fear no longer lived, and where every door ahead was unlocked by the bravery of a little girl who once had only $2 and an unbreakable heart. The truck disappeared down Birchwood Lane, its taillights glowing like embers in the dark. And the future, bright and fragile, began to bloom behind the walls of the house that finally felt like home. Sometimes the smallest act of courage becomes the doorway through which miracles enter our lives. Abby had only $2, but God used that tiny seed of hope to move mountains for her family. It's a reminder that in our own daily struggles, we don't need to have much, just enough faith to take one brave step. Grace meets us where strength fails, and protection often arrives through the people God places on our path. If this story touched your heart, please share it so others might feel that reminder of hope. Comment where you're watching from and tell us what part moved you the most. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that lift your spirit and renew your faith. May God watch over you and your family, today and always.